Tillamook. Good morning, everyone. There you go. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with worship this morning, so please stand with us. break up fellowship and reading, but if you can find your seats, I've got a couple of announcements I'm going to give you guys for this morning. All right, well, as you came in today or fellowshipping, you might have noticed at our round tables there in the back, lots of pictures colored and drawn and maybe even painted by our kids. And so part of this capital campaign process that we're going through and this whole process of preparing to refresh, renew, refocus our sanctuary and building, we wanted to make sure that we also let our children have a part, get excited about it. So they've had an opportunity to draw some of their ideas of what the sanctuary could look like. Some of them at different levels, and they're really fun. And actually, one that just really warms my heart, one of the kids said, he actually drew our sanctuary colored like the kids' church upstairs. And he said, I drew the only sanctuary I know. So pretty cute. But take a look at those because our kids are excited about this project as well. And then over by the doors there, you'll see jars with 5 faces on it. Mine, Pastor Josh's, Pastor Becca's, and then Wendell and Emily Alverson. And the 5 of us have allowed our names to be part of a contest that the kids are endeavoring to do. So the kids have been bringing in their change in dollars and contributing behind one of those, into the jar behind one of those faces. And whoever's face gets the most contributions will also end up getting a pie. So, in the face, yes, a pie in the face. Not to enjoy, unfortunately. And so, we wanted to let you guys know about that the kids have been contributing in that way. And if you want to join them and help them, even raise some more money, you can feel free to dump some change or bills in that. A check, whatever you'd like to do, and help them even raise a little more for the project. And then next, we've got the Prime Timers Thanksgiving dinner. I know it sounds crazy, but it is coming up faster than you believe. And so November 22nd, and there's a table in the back of our hall that's set up for people to be able to buy their tickets and get their name down so that they can have their spot. And then last but certainly not least, this week we will be having our annual harvest party here in the gym and Wyrick Hall. And this is a great opportunity for us to serve and connect with our community. We offer this every year. It's a family-friendly, safe environment for people to come out of the weather because, well, most years it's raining pretty bad on the 31st. And so it's a great place for them to come, have some carnival-style games, an affordable dinner. And if you'd like to be a part of that, if you'd like to help and serve in that area, please talk to Pastor Becca. She's got the sign-up sheet and can still use some more helpers. And if you'd like to bring candy to contribute, the candy basket's back there. Or just come and have fun and enjoy fellowshipping with us that night. And I believe Lori's coming.
Well, this is the last Sunday of October, and it's the last Sunday for Pastor Appreciation Month. And you guys have done a marvelous job. I see lots of stuff out there on the tables today, and also have been deposited at the office. And I just appreciate all that you have done to let our pastors know that they are loved. Today, we are focusing on the last two, I was going to say the best two, but that is not going to come out right. The last two, so if Paul and Josh could come forward. And for those of you who don't know, this is, Josh is our worship leader, and his brother, in case they look alike, Paul is our youth leader. And so we're very thankful that you guys are here. And before I have Dave come up and pray, you can come on up, Dave. I just think it's really cool that 3 of our 5 pastors were grown up in this church. 3 out of our 5. And so I just think that's really neat that they grew up here and they wanted to come back here. And so that's pretty cool. So you have a gift right there on the floor. It's just like what everyone else has gotten, except for your guys' are matching colors, which was a big mistake because they ride in the same car and they live in the same house. So it might be a problem, but we love you. And so Dave, you could pray a blessing on their lives.
Thank you so much for the gift that you placed right in our lives. The gift called and Josh. Bud and Bubba. And Lord, you've got something in mind when you created these two wonderful human beings. And we ask that your will would be done. We thank you that you are using their talents in our church. And God, I just pray as they move into the future, that you would have your hand of blessing and protection on them. And God, make them disciple makers. Amen.
One last thing is, this is October and we're done, but yet you have a job the rest of this year and every year, is to pray for our pastors. And I'm going to read this. Pray all year, every day, that God will be the focus of our pastors' hearts, that they will be 100% for Him and filled with Him, and that they will hear His will, and that they will stand strong in peace in His leadings. So pray every day for our pastors. They need that uplift from us.
All right, we're going to transition back into worshiping through song. So people sing.
In the crushing, in the pressing, you are making new wine. In
ushers to come forward if you would. And as they do, we're going to go into a time of prayer. And prayer is crucial to everything that we do. Not too long ago, somebody approached me and said, Pastor, I feel like you're trying to get me to pray all the time. I said, well, that'd be good. I think that's a good place to start. He said, we had the 21 Days of Prayer booklet when we got here, and we've done other prayer initiatives. Now we've got a little bookmark for the capital campaign. Prayer is central to who we are. It's a way that we communicate with our God. And along with that, there's another opportunity for you to join us in prayer. And our district is getting ready to elect a new district superintendent. Dr. Reeder, for those of you who don't know, is going to be moving back to Colorado and stepping into a new ministry role. And so, for those of you who don't know what a district superintendent is, it's basically my boss. And so he is the one who's responsible for bringing me here, so I'm either here to say I'm sorry, or maybe if I did a good job regardless, we need to pray for that person. They are the one that we go to when we say, hey, we've got a capital campaign coming up. Where do we start? What do we do? They're the ones that help kind of lead and shape the district and cast the vision for planting churches or reaching new people. And so it's an important role. And what the district has come up with is asking us to read Matthew 6:33, which says, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all of these things will be given to you as well. And so what they've said is, as we seek God and his will, set an alarm on your phone or your whatever you set alarms on at 6:33 in the morning and in the evening. And when that goes off, just say a quick prayer and say, God, whoever it is that you have in store to be our next leader, I pray that you would start preparing their hearts and preparing this district for the way that God is going to use that person to lead the churches on the Oregon Pacific District. So if you would please join me in prayer. Dear God, we come before you today, and we do ask that you would be with our district as they make these decisions, Lord, and as they bring the right person in to help lead us as we continue faithfully following you. God, we also pray that you be with each of us today as we come in here, Lord, and we want to give you praise for the incredible things that you're doing in the lives of so many people, God. The way that you're working out situations and finances and relational issues, God. You truly do care. And Lord, we also come before you on behalf of those who are struggling today. God, whether it be from physical, spiritual, emotional, health issues, Lord, those who have just had a difficult week, month, or year, God, those who are struggling, those who are stressed out or brokenhearted. God, we pray that today we could just lay all of that down at your feet, that we could focus on you. During this time that we're together, Lord, we pray that you would speak to us, that we would hear from you, God, that you would speak to our heart, that you would give us the encouragement that we need, the motivation that we need, God, to make it through another week. Lord, I pray that we would continue to give you praise for the many blessings you've given us. And God, we pray that you continue to unite us as a church with a common mission and vision to reach those who don't yet have a relationship with you, to be Jesus to our community, God, that they would see you shining through us. And God, as we give of our tithes and offerings, we pray that you would use this money, that you would multiply it to further your kingdom, God, to further the abilities of the ministries of this church, Lord, as we continue reaching out and obediently, faithfully serving you. And it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you.
If you turn your attention to the screen, we have a video show.
So my wife and I, we thought for a long time that I should step out and open my own company. And I really started praying about it because it's super scary. No more solid income, no more security at all. And I just felt through the whole process that basically God helped me take the lead, really helped me feel comfortable. It's not easy. Tina, the other day I called her and I was super worried. I was like, I had no work for next week. And I told her, I was like, literally within an hour, I had like 5 new jobs for next week. And it was amazing. I called her and I was like, it worked. She's like, that's so awesome, babe.
I think we say too that the Holy Spirit can meet you everywhere, but there is just a feeling stepping into a sanctuary as a community and just something to be really proud of, you know, for our family and our kids and as a church.
In 2 Corinthians chapter 12, in one of Paul's visions, God speaks to him and says, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness, so that Christ's power may rest on me." Church, anytime we step out in faith, we have to recognize it's not our own power. It's the grace of God that anything happens. And as we endeavor to launch our Refresh, Renew, Refocus capital campaign to get back into our sanctuary, we have to recognize this is a matter of faith. It's a big undertaking, but we can't be afraid. We have to recognize that the grace of God goes before us. And if this is His plan, then how can we lose? All right, good morning, everyone. So we are continuing in our series today, and we are in week 3, and the word for today is grace. And before I get into that, kids, you are dismissed. The video threw me off. I even saw the reminder before the video, but it's all right. So I'm going to start with a little story for you. Early airplane pilots love to take risks. I think there's always an inherent risk in flying. And with that, some of the early single-engine planes, much like the one you see up here, these guys decided, hey, let's try to make these cross-Atlantic flights. And so there was one pilot who decided he was going to endeavor to fly across the Atlantic Ocean in a small single-engine plane. So he takes off, everything's going well, and he gets well into his flight, and all of a sudden he looks down and he starts seeing bits of wire insulation ominously falling at his feet, and that's not a good sign. And it's accompanied with this grinding, gnawing noise, and he knew there was only one explanation. He's reaching under the dash, trying to find what's chewing at his instrument panel, and he knows it has to be a rat. That's the only thing that can be causing this. He was too far into the trip to be able to turn around. He didn't have the fuel to turn around and come back. So he did the only thing he could think of. He put on his oxygen mask and he sent the plane straight up. And he kept climbing and climbing and climbing until suddenly a thud and a dead rat falls at his feet. He comes back down, he takes off the mask, and he's able to complete the flight, and he's safe. This rodent was the result of a change in atmosphere. The pilot went so high that this rodent could no longer survive. The pilot had what he needed, but the rodent couldn't. I think oftentimes when we step out in faith, much like in this capital campaign, Satan likes to throw some rats in to mess us up, to get us distracted, to get us to question and to doubt and to fear. And the only thing we can do is climb higher into the realm of the Lord and trust in Him and say, we can't worry about this. This is God's deal. This is God's church. This is God's plan. And if we're going to succeed, it's going to be because of Him. We can't sit here worrying about that. We just need to kind of kill out any of those distractions. And so today, what we're going to be looking at is the grace that God provides to get us through what He's called us to do. The scripture that we're going to look at today is 2 Corinthians. We're going to be in chapters 8 and 9. And so starting in 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 1, it says, and now, brothers and sisters, we want you to know about the grace that God has given the Macedonian churches. Moving down to verse 7. But since you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness, and in the love that we have kindled in you, see that you also excel in this grace of giving. Flipping over to chapter 9, verse 6 through 11, it says, remember this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. As it is written, they have freely scattered their gift to the poor. Their righteousness endures forever. Now he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will also supply you and increase your store of seed, and will enlarge the harvest of your righteousness. You will be enriched in every way, so that you can be generous on every occasion. And through us, your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God. So we need to remember, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will reap generously. We need to recognize we have to start investing in these areas that we believe in. It's across the board. It's in our spiritual life. If we say, I want to grow in my faith, we need to start investing time, spending time with God, reading His Word, spending time in prayer, being a part of a group that encourages us to do that. We have to invest if we want to receive. We can't afford to sow sparingly into the lives of people today. As a church, we need to be about the business of making Christ-like disciples. We need to recognize that we have something special to offer as a Christian, missional, holiness church. We talk about connect and grow and serve. We want to connect people to Jesus Christ. We want to see them grow in that relationship, and we want to see them find their place to serve Him. That's why we do this, and it's also that the good news of Jesus can be proclaimed to people, that every single person has an opportunity to enter into a relationship with him. That is our purpose, plain and simple, as a church. And the reason it's so important is because this generation and the one to come desperately needs Jesus Christ. Listen to these statistics. 25% of children have committed a crime in the past year. 40% of children consume alcohol before their 13th birthday, and more than 40% of individuals who started drinking before 13 adopt a lifestyle of alcohol abuse. 30,000 internet users are accessing a pornographic website every single second. There are over 4.2 million pornographic websites and counting every single day. 93% of boys and 62% of girls are exposed to pornography before their 18th birthday. 15% of boys and 9% of girls have seen child pornography, and only 12% of parents ever knew their kids accessed pornography. 94% of teens say that there is no moral absolute. Their worldview of our society is boiled down to the word whatever. 1 million teens attempt suicide every single year. 1 million children run away from home every year, and the average age of a runaway is 14 years old. Linda Carlson of the Washington Post wrote a book called Not Much, Just Chillin', where she embedded herself in a junior high for a year. And she said the #1 topic of discussion was sex, and the studies have shown that 1 out of 5 graduating high schoolers this year will have contracted an incurable sexually transmitted disease. The world needs the church to stand up and be who we were called to be, a people of hope, a people of faith, a people that preach truth, because our world sells a bunch of cheap lies. And it's time that we step up and say, God, what have you called us to do? And we're not happy just standing back and saying, boy, somebody should do something. We have been given all we need to stand up and do something. God has changed us, and so we need to make sure that we're stepping out in faith and saying, God, how can we be a part of taking your light to this dark world? There are people hurting, and there are people who desperately need this message. How am I going to play my part to make a difference to take this message to this world? That's why we're here. That's what this is all about. See, this capital campaign, yes, it's to rebuild our sanctuary, but it's about what takes place in that sanctuary that's important. That is a place where we come together as a community and we grow in our faith and we sing praises to our God for the many blessings he's pouring out on us. We come on our very worst day and we cry at the foot of the cross and say, Lord, I need you. Where we bring our friends in, they accept Christ for the very first time. That's what this is all about. That's why we're pushing so hard to get back there, so that in this room, this is a place where our community is able to come, and we see little kids having sports camps in here, and we see high schools having banquets, and we see different opportunities for people to come into our building where we get the chance to show them the love of Jesus Christ, where we have open table and celebrate recovery and youth group and harvest parties and all of those things. See, this church is just a tool. We are just a tool to proclaim the message of Jesus Christ to a world who desperately needs it. We just need to make sure that we're playing our part, that we are obedient, and recognize we're not alone. This isn't on us. You don't need to be strong enough. You don't need to be smart enough, thank goodness, because I don't feel like I am. But we serve a God who gives us everything that we need to do what he has called us to do. That's the beauty of this. And some hear these statistics and they blame the children and they say, what's wrong with kids today? The truth is, kids haven't changed. The world that we have given them is what has changed. And so we need to step up and say, how can we be a part of fixing this mess? How can we be a part of the solution rather than just pointing out the problem? We all see it. And it goes far beyond just these statistics I read. God can intervene in any situation, in any life, and bring hope and restoration. That's what this is about. But when it comes to stepping out in faith, sometimes reluctance can get in the way. In 2 Corinthians 9:7, we read, each man should give what he has decided in his heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. The Lord loveth a cheerful giver, but he also accepteth from a grudge. And so here, like, just because you're not cheerful doesn't mean God can't use it. So even if you're not happy about it, you can still give. But God desires us to be cheerful about it and see that we get to partner with him. We get to be a part of what he's doing, and this is one more way that we get to do that. Someone once asked, who's happier? A man with 10 kids or a man with $10 million? The answer is obvious. It's a man with 10 kids, because the man with $10 million still wants more. We often make the mistake of thinking that money brings happiness, but the truth is, the person with $10 million is no happier than the person with $9 million. The root of the word miserable actually goes back to the word miser. So the surest way to misery is misery, which is being stingy, greedy, selfish. And it's something that I know I'm not going to put on everybody. I think it's human nature, but I know it's true for me. I have a tendency to be greedy, stingy, right? Like, I get this nice warm cinnamon roll. I want to eat that cinnamon roll. Every bite is mine. I don't want to share. I don't want to give you a taste, right? Like, I get a coffee because that's the size coffee that I wanted. I don't want to give you a drink. I love my wife, and I do, but I don't want to. Like, when I get money for my birthday, I want to buy myself something. I have things that I want. So there are times where I have to remember, this life is not about me. There are times I'd like to think it revolves around me. I'd like to think that I'm the only one God's talking to, so my plan is the right way, the only way. I have to step back and say, listen, I am nothing more than a toolbox or a tool in a giant toolbox that God gives to use, right? I'm one small little piece. I need to make sure I'm being obedient and I'm doing my part and I'm fitting in and not stepping on everybody else, stay in my lane, do what God has called me to do. And then recognize the blessings that flow when that happens and how much happier I am when I'm doing what I was created to do. Rather than trying to be over here where I don't fit or I don't belong, or that's not God's plan for my life. Because I spent a lot of time in my life trying to fit different areas and trying to force these areas to fit and be what I wanted them to be or fit into them, and it just didn't work. I was always miserable. I was always frustrated because it never seemed like it worked. Until I finally stepped out and said, all right, God, I know you're calling me to ministry. I never in a million years wanted to stand up in front of a group like this. I hated public speaking. I hated talking in front of my class at school. Like, none of it appealed to me. I was miserable. I was nervous. I hated everything about it. So I was really frustrated when God called me into ministry. But I said, all right, there's got to be a reason. There's got to be a plan. And he's helped me get over a lot of that. Not that I'm this fantastic communicator, but at the same time, I'm at least not sitting up here like sweating profusely and, like wanting to throw up. So there's progress. God gives us what we need to do what he has called us to do. So how do we become a cheerful giver, right? Like, oftentimes when somebody asks you to give something, the first response isn't joy, right? It's like, okay, I gotta really think about this. Why are you asking me? What is it you're asking me? What's it gonna cost? There's this process. There's a process I go through, I'll say that. But getting to the point where we say, God, anything you ask of me, I'm going to give, and I'm going to give cheerfully, because we recognize the only reason I have any of this stuff is because you've given it to me, whether it be finances or time or material possessions. It's all from God. And so recognizing anything I have to offer, I should give praise, because thank God I at least have the opportunity to offer it. 2 Corinthians 8:1 says, and now, brothers, we want you to know about the grace that God has given the Macedonian churches. But just as you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness, and in love for us, see that you also excel in this grace of giving. I can personally testify that there have been times where it has been hard for Valerie and I to be at the point of giving cheerfully. We've always paid our tithe, but there have been times where it's like, we've got bills stacking up, we've got all this other stuff we need to do. Like, it's hard, and it's almost, I'm ashamed to say, it felt like a burden at times to, write that tithe check each week. But we got to this point where we had both said, here's the reality. God will carry us through. We want to be obedient, and we will just adjust and make do, but we're not going to rip God off. He's done way too much for us to be stingy with him. I'll rip myself off somewhere else. But We're just going to make it a choice that we're going to give faithfully. It's the first thing we do. And we really are. We've got to the point where we're cheerful about it. Like, this is so cool that we get to be a part of it. Now later in the month, it's, a different story, but we're still happy when we give God that check because we know we've done what he has called us to do. And when you stop and look at those words, joyful, cheerful, excited, sacrificially, those aren't typically words we associate with giving of our stuff. But when God enters the picture, we recognize that what we're giving to is so much bigger than ourselves. And that God can do so much more with us than we could ever have dreamed to do with those things. In our Connect group on Wednesday, this topic came up, and I didn't plan it, I didn't start it, somebody just randomly brought it up. And they were saying, for our family, we've always tithed. And, there have been times it's become an obligation. And we planned to give to the capital campaign, but there wasn't a whole lot of joy or excitement with it. So they said, God kind of got a hold of us recently, and we just recognized that we need to be cheerful about this. Like, the only reason we have an opportunity to give anything is because of the blessing God has given us. And so we begin giving praise to God every time we start giving our tithe. And as we talk about what we're going to give, praising God, saying, thank you for letting me be a part of this. And they said it's completely changed the way that they do what they do when it comes to giving to God. It's changed that mindset of this isn't a burden, this isn't a legalistic type requirement. This is, I get to be a part of something so much larger than myself. And then I get to model that for my kids. And really that's what it's about. I've had some of you who have even come up and talked about the way that, you continued tithing when you lost work or different things that happened, and God always prepared. There are times where we eat top ramen in the process, but guess what? We're still here. God still provided. He was faithful. He gives us what we need to be obedient in what he has called us to do. And once God's grace breaks in, then there is a reward. And so we see that reward. Think about the reward when it comes to giving. Acts 20:35 says, it is more blessed to give than receive. God is able to satisfy our needs. That verse in 2 Corinthians 9:8 says, and God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound. And there's a difference between all that you need and all that you want. We're not saying, hey, give to the capital campaign and God's going to bless you with a boat and a yacht and a plane and, a fancy vacation to the Bahamas. But he's saying, I will give you what you need. If you're worried, okay, how am I going to do this and pay that bill? Somehow God's math just adds up. It just works. God will provide all that we need. I've had some people that have actually told me about how they started tithing and the way that God has just started to bless them, and they've seen a change in their life. They're, suddenly happier and growing in their faith, and God works with a cheerful giver. And all of this happens when we step out in faith. And here's the thing. There's going to be times where you decide, and finally, I'm going to make that step of faith. I'm going to get involved. And then that worry in the back of your head, well, what happens if the car breaks down? What happens when that unexpected bill comes? Which, how many of you have ever received an unexpected bill? Raise your hand. All right, so have you noticed recently that when bills arrive, now they're suddenly stacked full of junk mail on top of it? There's like a stack of advertisements and all of this other stuff in there. Like, if getting a bill isn't bad enough, they have to give you a bunch of junk mail. I was actually talking with somebody who said that, kind of to get back at the man, those envelopes, a lot of them come pre-addressed, so you just put whatever in there and send it. Whether it's a thin little lightweight check or a bunch of garbage that whatever you can fit in the envelope, and they just have to pay for it. So they started taking anything they can find laying on their desk and just chalking it full, even like wrappers to candy bars and whatever. They'll put their check in there, but they mail that all right back with them. I have no idea why. I was thinking about paying unexpected bills and that came to my mind. But, what happens when that unexpected bill comes? What do? This says that God will provide all of our needs. Somehow God's math makes sense in ways that our math doesn't always seem to work. It says he will supply your seed. He who supplies seed to the sower. The Lord doesn't supply seed to the keeper. See, this life isn't about how can I get a bunch of cool stuff and keep it, But it's to give it back out. See, it's that whole idea of God has blessed us so that we can be a blessing. Not just so that we can kind of sit back and be fat and happy and, hey, sweet, this is good, I got all the stuff I need, I'm done, right? No, it's, what are you doing with that now? You know, if we're supposed to be modeling Christ, if he's giving us blessings, shouldn't we be giving that blessing on to others? Shouldn't we be using the things that he has done for us to be a blessing to those around us? So God is providing you with the very seed that you need to fulfill what he is going to call you to do. And then it says he multiplies it. In verse 10, now he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will also supply and increase your storehouse of seed. So not only does the Lord provide the seed that you need, but he can also provide for you even in the midst of that. And for some reason, I struggle to remember that at times, that what we see in the natural world that happens all the time, God created that. And what I mean by that is, how many of you understand, I think most of us here do, that when you go to the grocery store to buy produce, that fruit and vegetable doesn't just magically appear on the shelf. It came from somewhere. A farm, right? Like it grew in the ground. How does that happen? So take corn, for instance. A farmer takes a kernel of corn and puts it in the ground. It grows up and this corn stalk grows. Say it has 4 ears of corn on an average stalk. An average ear of corn has about 430 kernels of corn. So from one seed that this guy planted, suddenly that one stalk has given him 1,000 kernels. He put one in the ground and 1,000 come up. That's how God designed the natural world to work. Yet we have a hard time trusting him with the things that he's given us. Well, God, I've got to do this. You don't think God knows that? You don't think God knows everything that you have going on in life when he called you, hey, I want you to do this? Well, Lord, if you knew what was going on, come on, let's be real. Of course he knows what's going on. And you know what? The only reason you're getting through it so far is because of him. And he's already got a plan for you to do what he's calling you to do. He's not going to cast you out into the desert and leave you there to die. He's a loving Father. That's not the way he works. So if he's calling you to step out in faith, it's because he has a plan for you to succeed. That's the way God works. We don't serve a God who has failed. We don't serve a God who enjoys losing. We serve a God who has said we are more than conquerors through Christ who conquered sin and death already. We need to understand that God is gracious. He is going to give us what we need to fulfill what he has called us to do. We just need to do our part and be obedient and step out in faith. I know of several people over the years who have talked about this idea of giving and just how it has radically transformed their life. In fact, I had somebody this week in this church who came up to me and talked about how one of the leanest times financially for their family, they decided that they were going to start tithing. And suddenly, they picked up an extra side job, they got a raise at their main job, and they said, we were making more money after I started giving away 10% of what I had than we were beforehand. Now, again, don't hear something I'm not saying. I'm not telling you that I guarantee you if you give money to the church, you're going to get more back. But I'm saying God provides for his people who are faithful. God will supply our needs. The Lord is able to multiply in ways that are just unbelievable. And so we need to be qualified. God has qualified us to succeed. We read that in 2 Corinthians 9:11. Paul summarizes the Lord's promise to make you succeed by writing, you will be made rich in every way. Winston Churchill said it this way, we make a living through what we get. We make a life through what we give. As we give, the Lord releases his blessings on our life. There was once a boy who was in school, and the teacher said, son, if you have $2 and your dad gives you $4, how much money do you have? And the boy said, I have $2. And the teacher said, son, I don't think you understand math. And the boy said, teacher, I don't think you know my dad. And, the reality is people wonder, is the Lord going to bring success? Is this really going to work? How is this going to happen? How am I going to find peace and joy and steadfastness? All we can say is, you don't know our God. Trust him. Give him a chance to do what he does, and you will be blown away with the results. So what is the result that he desires? What does the Lord want to reward? 2 Corinthians 9:11, so all these blessings are so that you can be generous on every occasion, and your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God. It's so that we can step back and say, I have no idea how that happened. I have no idea how God worked that out, but praise be to God. This isn't me. This isn't us. This is something that God did. That's the whole point of this, is for him to show up and show himself through the many ways that each of us step out in faith and trust him. And it's so that others will give the praise to God. C.S. Lewis said, I do not believe one can settle how much we ought to give. I'm afraid the only safe rule is to give more than we can spare. See, our generosity will lead to thanksgiving and people giving praise to God. Dr. George W. Truett was a pastor almost 100 years ago. And this man was a powerful speaker. They refer to him as a titan of the pulpit, and he could just get up and demand an audience. And so at one point he was doing a revival, and he had this plan to continue to spread this revival. So he takes up an offering, and he's really buckling down and getting everybody ready to give. And so the ushers are walking around with these 2-foot-tall baskets with an opening at the top. And as they get to the back, at some point during the service, a kind of a ragtag, dirty homeless boy comes in. He'd been pushing a little bread cart, and he came in and he sat in the back. And so the usher gets in front of him, and he's not sure what to do. And the next thing you know, this little boy crawls inside the basket. And so the usher's like, ready to get him out. And on second thought, the usher said, no. He picks up the basket with the little boy, walks all the way to the front of the church, and sets it on the altar. And they said there was silence. Truett looks over at him, and he said you could hear men start weeping in the audience. And he said the offering that night, the second wave of offering, just blew the doors off of what they had received. The first one, seeing that little boy said, I don't have anything to offer, but you can have me. And what a beautiful imagery of what God is asking us. It's not about, whether you can give $1 or $1 million. It's God wants your obedience. He wants your heart. He wants all of you to say, what can I do with you? He's more concerned with that relationship. It's not just that you are a bank account that you can keep funneling money to whatever he wants. He's concerned with you. You are his child. He loves you, and he wants to use you to partner with him in ministry to do incredible things. And so that night, the celebration erupts as people are excited to come and say, we're going to join him. We're giving everything to this mission, because if that little guy can set the example, then we can follow suit. And I think about this capital campaign, and I've had people say, we've still got to pay the bills. We've still got to keep the lights on. How are we going to keep ties up and raise all of this money and do it in 3 years? God. That's the answer. The answer to the way that works is that is God's math. I truly believe that if we step out in faith and every single one of us joins together and does our part, that not only do we have to not worry about that, I think tithing can go up even in the midst of this 3-year campaign. I think we will get more than enough. I think we will be blown away with the way that God uses our obedience. See, God is not going to ask us to do something that he doesn't already have a plan to provide the means to do. We need to just be obedient. And the reality is we've had some people that have come forward, several families, that have already said that they're going to pledge, combined with these families, over $225,000 to our campaign. We're already well on the way. Now, we've still got a long ways to go, but I truly believe that if we all do our part and step out in faith, in just a few weeks, this dream is going to be a reality. And we're going to get to step back and say, how in the world did we just do that? The answer is God. Because God has a plan, God has a dream, and God is going to use us to make a difference. We cannot do what God does. But we also have to recognize that God will not do what he has called us to do. We are called to partner with him in fulfilling his plan and his mission. And so on November 10th, as a church, we're going to come together. And I'd like to see everybody there. And I know that, it doesn't happen often, but I was here Easter, and I saw that almost everybody was here, so we can do it again. Get everybody together, and together, we're going to cast our pledge and say, we are going to be obedient to God, we are going to come together. We are going to invest in this generation and the next generation and the next generation. We're going to invest in Tillamook County, and we're going to do our part to make sure that this church is here for another 100 years to proclaim the message of Jesus Christ to people who desperately need that hope. Because we have that opportunity, and we want to make sure everybody else has that opportunity. That's what this whole campaign is about. And so November 10th, we're going to come together, and I truly believe that we are going to do this. I really believe we're going to have more than enough, because I truly believe that God has incredible plans for this church. And when God is in control, there is no way that we can possibly lose. And so what I'd like to encourage you to do is join me in praying and just say, God, what is it that you would have me do to partner with you to make a difference in this community and in this church? Would you please pray with me? Dear God, I pray that each of us open up our heart to your grace. Lord, life is busy. There's expenses, and we still need to put food on the table and gas in the car, and it can be stressful. I understand that. In fact, we're there ourselves. But Lord, I pray that as each of us pray and ask, Lord, what is it that you would have us do? That we don't do out of a sense of obligation, that we don't do out of a sense of being coerced, Lord, or guilt or anything else, but that we would be able to get to the point where we can joyfully come before you and say, praise God, look what I get to give. Look what I get to be a part of. Lord, whether it's $1 or $1 million, whatever it is, Lord, we are sacrificially giving together to make a difference. We are in this together because we believe in you. We believe in your message. We are so thankful for the way you've touched our life. As this little voice jumped in that basket because that's all he had to give, he did so because of the difference a relationship with you makes. And so, God, I pray that each of us would say, Lord, help me to stop viewing my time and my resources and my stuff as mine, but just as tools to be used to make a difference. God, I pray that this church would continue to be led by your Spirit, that we would be obedient. And God, I pray that we would make a difference in this community. Lord, I pray that week in and week out we would be celebrating those who have come to a relationship with you. That as we come together on Sundays and Wednesdays to grow in our faith and celebrate, God, that we would go out each week recognizing that we're a sent people, that we have friends and relatives who need to hear this message. And so, God, whether it be with words or with actions, I pray that we constantly point people to you, that we shine your light so bright that it's impossible to miss. And God, I just pray that each of us would come before you humbly, obedient, and just accepting the grace that you've given us so that we can be a blessing to others. Lord, we love you and we give